Hello all, welcome to my channel. I'm ready with a new video. In this video, we will be discussing on the options of running Apache Flink on AWS cloud. So let's get started. First thing first, Apache Flink is a real-time stream computation platform which processes events in real time, and it's distributed. It can scale very well. It provides latency numbers in millisecond. So that's the overview of Flink, and Flink is majorly used uh, in companies where the sensitivity to the latency is very low, sorry, very high in case. So, for example, Spark also supports streaming, but that has a micro batch concept. It is not truly real-time streaming. It is just near real-time. So, if your company or if your use case is to provide something in streaming fashion, Flink can be one production ready battle tested solution, but there are other as well. For example, Bento is there, Bytewax is there. Uh, so there are some other Python modules, Pathway is there. So there are different options are there. But if your company is into making it large scale, Flink is the solution, and that's why we are trying to see how what are the options that we can use to run Flink on AWS environment or AWS cloud. So Flink on AWS has as we can have two offerings in AWS. One is the fully managed offering, other one is partially managed offering. So what is fully managed? Fully managed is a service. Fully managed offering in for Flink are two. One is a AWS managed service for Flink and AWS managed Flink Studio. So the managed service for Flink is where you can run your Flink jobs, and the managed Flink Studio does allow us to directly work with Flink in an interactive manner using notebooks. So that's the two different ways in which AWS offers is managed services in Flink. When it comes to partially managed or why I have said it partially managed, because the cluster itself is not managed by us. So for example, Flink on EMR. So we have the control of going and changing the binaries and stuff like that inside the EMR part. We can install few other things as well. So we have not full management. We have certain responsibility of management is up to us as well. Similarly, Flink on Kubernetes is also an option. What is nothing but Flink on EMR on EKS. So if you have an EMR container, so EMR has an option of running virtual container, which is nothing but a which points to simply to a virtual cluster hosted on EKS. And because Flink does support Helm charts and it supports operators as well, so we can leverage that either operator, or we can use uh, Flink charts or Flink manifests as well to run Flink on EMR on EKS. So let's see in detail which things we have that we can do with Flink on different services. So Flink on EMR is again an option. So EMR runs on yarn. So what will happen is when we launch Flink on EMR, basically we will be launching Flink with yarn cluster manager or yarn resource manager, and it will allow us to submit transient Flink jobs to or we can create long running clusters that accepts multiple jobs and allocates resources according to the overall yarn reservation that we have. So how we launch it is we in AWS console, while we are trying to launch an EMR cluster, we have an option under the applications. We can select, once we select the EMR runtime, we have option of selecting the which applications that we want to have on that cluster, and in there we have option of Flink, and we can select Flink. So for example, for EMR 7.1.0, we see that Flink version is 1.18.1. So that way, if we want a higher version of Flink, we can change the runtime and see which is available, and then we can use that. Even we have option of running custom images and supplying that applications ourselves. But it's if it you are getting started, this option is well and good enough. So this will uh, work well, and to access the Flink application, you will have to SSH into the EMR master node, and then from there you can Flink jar. You can submit the Flink jar, and the Flink will, or using the Flink CLI, we can run the client libraries. So this is how you will do it for. Uh, uh, you will launch Flink on EMR. One thing is that there are certain challenges with this is the Flink version is tied to the underlying EMR version. As I mentioned, if you want Flink's higher version, you will have to change the EMR release. And also, you know that once a cluster is launched, you can't change the release. So you will have to recreate you have to create a new cluster altogether. So this is one limitation, that the Flink version that you want to use must be across the cluster, and that cluster has to be selected with the right runtime. Uh, then the life cycle of the Flink application while working with EMR on AKS requires an SSH into the EMR node. You can do a bypass of that if you use SSM, so that you can slightly disable the uh, SSH part. Like you can use SSM, which is Systems Manager, to access the EC2 instances of the master node and then run queries. But yes, that still behind the scene does SSH. So that is another thing that, okay, to start and stop, you will have to use that. The second part is updating the jar requires manually killing the yarn session, because there is no way for us to go ahead and kill the application from some anywhere else. So yeah, that is another thing to note, is that if you want to start and stop an application, you will have to do via the yarn application kill command, because it runs as a yarn application behind the scene. As so, this these are few challenges with EMR on sorry, Flink on EMR on EC2. Then we have option of running EMR on EKS. Again, so it is something similar. Instead of yarn, it will use the Kubernetes cluster as the resource manager, and the runtimes and everything remain same. What we can do is that while working with EMR on EKS, we can leverage the application's parallelism, and we can also use auto scaling from Carpenter or cluster auto scaler to dynamically increase and decrease the size of the cluster, so that the Flink jobs continue to work under the desired or the expected latency and throughput numbers. So there are two ways to run EMR on EKS. One is the native method using the Flink binary, and the other one is using the Flink operator. We can choose any of that. And the process is, we have to first set up the Kubernetes cluster on EKS, then select an EMR release label, attach that to this particular as a virtual cluster, and then install Flink operator or Flink binary native. Once the EKS and Flink is ready, kubectl apply will launch a Flink deployment, and you can submit the application. Or the other option is that we can simply say Flink home bin Flink CLI, and then run the applications like this, which where we provide target is equal to Kubernetes application, namespace, cluster, all the details are provided. The advantages of this is that we can run any version of Flink in this point, because each of the job runs with container, and each container can have their own different version of Flink. So that does not affect each other's job, and hence we can run multiple versions of Flink. For example, if you want to run 1.19 parallel to 1.18, that's possible in EKS if you are running two different jobs. Then comes the other part is that we can also decide to give each job its dedicated namespace or dedicated node pool. So we can have true isolation in terms of workload as well. And so that's the part supports for a better tenant isolation. We can also accommodate multiple applications within a single cluster, because we can do it multiple jobs can be running. We can leverage the full 100% CPU and resource utilization of the cluster by running multiple jobs. So yeah, those are the advantages, but still there are some challenges. The biggest challenge is to manage the EKS and their patching. And it's EKS, managing EKS, it's slightly difficult, because it's a very distributed system. It has the main challenge is upgrading, because upgrades might have breaking changes, and we'll have to test it again and again. So yeah, that's one particular challenge with EMR on EKS. And from the security point of view, if you see what is managed and what is not managed. So if you see managed service or Flink, which is we will discuss now, see what things are totally managed and what we just have to manage. And in case of EMR on EKS, so what is managed is this, and these things we will have to still manage. Okay, so let's see about the Flink Studio. So Flink Studio is something which allows us to run Flink applications in an interactive way using SQL, Python, or Scala languages. And this is done using Zeppelin notebook. So the architecture is like this. So we have Zeppelin web, which runs a paragraph or a cell that gets into Zeppelin context. That the in here there is a Flink interpreter which receives that context and then runs it in pods. So that's how this Flink serverless Flink Zeppelin notebook integrated with Flink cluster works to give us an IDE that can run Flink jobs. The process is we create the notebook, we run the interactive code and test, run the notebook and deploy the notebook as an application. That's what we do. And to deploy that, if we want to use a certain connectors, we'd have to add that in the supported connectors. And then we do it. So once we have tested our notebook, we can deploy a node to run in streaming mode. So there are two modes, streaming and batch mode, and that we can do it. So this is just simple. There's a good documentation as well how to run a Flink job in notebook. Also, Flink Managed Studio requires glue catalog database for state and configuration management. So that has to be created before we start the Flink job. So we have seen this before creating the Flink application, you will have to create this catalog because the application creation asks for us to provide the catalog. If it is not there, it will create as well, but generally it's a good practice to create it separately so that the separation of concern is there, that the application's life cycle is different than what the catalog's life cycle is. There are a few points to note in the Flink Studio that it should be used for dev and experimentation. This is not production, not for production workloads, and there are limited options for auto scaling and parameter tuning. Also, the monitoring levels are also very skewed, like skewed in a sense, not that detailed. We can enable task level, application level logs, and no automated checkpointing is also not available in the notebooks. Then comes the Amazon Managed Service of Flink. So this is what you call is the production version of how you things be run. You should be running Flink application. So you create a jar, you create an application out of that jar, deploy it into the AWS environment, and let the environment do the job and let it run in streaming fashion. So the process is you build the streaming application jar, upload it to S3, create the application in console, configure application, code configuration and everything, and run the application. While running the application, you can start from snapshot or you can start from the beginning. That is there. You define that in the application properties file that what should be the different configuration options that are there for the Flink application. And the recovery and rollback, it supports full recovery and rollback option is in the job mode, not in the notebook mode. So in this, there are certain states of that particular application. So it starts with ready. It starts when you first create, it will become ready. Then we click on start, and then it stays running. So after that, it can go into updating or auto scaling, and then everything is there. And then it will go back to rolling back. If you're successful, roll back to previous version. Then again, it will go back to running. If something goes wrong, it will go back to the whole rollback and then uh, become again ready for processing the data. So now, if we have four different options, which one we should be choosing for running Flink in AWS environment? So the question starts with what is your use case? If it is a long running job, streaming ETL or continuous application. So now the question comes, do you have the programming experience? If yes, Python, you know Python, then you can run Flink using Flink application. But let's say if you don't know Python or Java or Scala language, but you know and have worked with SQL, so you can go ahead with deploy Studio application and then make that as a production application promotion for a pipeline job. If let's say your job is ad hoc, you are just doing trying to do some exploration and stuff like that, then you should go ahead with Studio Notebook option. The thing to note is that in the notebook there is very less capability of making it CI/CD and deployment from the production point of view. So the better approach will be I generally ask everyone to start using the job console rather than doing the notebook console. So yeah, that's it for this video. Uh, Hope you like it, and if you do share this video with others. Have a nice day.